Hey there. Oh, wow. I always have technical issue in the first time of my talk. So for some reason, it's the new computer. So yeah, you know how it goes. Hello there and welcome here. Today we're not going to talk about testing anymore. This time I'm going back to state management. Some fun with state management with XState. Shall we? Yep. So first and foremost, my name is Shavin. I'm a senior software engineer at Microsoft. I've been working with the front end and full stack for many years, and I'm also the accessibility champion of Micro, which oversee accessibility compliance and make sure that everyone in my team are aware that accessibility is one of the important part when they designing on working with the UI. And currently a mother of four. And yeah, I just gone out maternity leave. I have a baby of 5 months, almost 6 months old, and I'm really tired all the time. And I'm a book author. And talking about book author, I just released a book on Learning View. And if you're interested in Learning View, learning how to work with TypeScript and Vue 3, check it out. And before we move forward, Happy Lunar New Year to whoever is celebrating Lunar New Year. And, and it's the year of the snake. So Happy New Year. Con xin phá cái, chúc mừng năm mới. And we're ready to go. Yeah. So before we deep dive in XDay and why we're even here to talk about XDay, let's do a bit of recap of state management. We know that we always do state management, some sort of state management in our application development and everything. So why state management? Well, to avoid this. Oh, luckily this is only happening in Windows and not in my Mac. So yeah, well, it's annoying. I'm from Microsoft, so I cannot say anything about this. But it's a legend proof screen, and we do state management to avoid this. No, not exactly. State management to know that we reach to this state and why we reach to this state. And we have a 20% complete there to tell you exactly how many percent you complete, why you crash. But actually, state management is doing more simpler things, like to answer more simpler scenario of questions. We need state management to answer one question in our application, which is how does the app react when something happens? When something happens mean when a user change something, interact with your applications, UI, so on and so forth. Anything happen in your application, or we can call it the way that the data flow. We keep the data flow consistent with state management. So either it's the input validations, or it's the warning, or even the form submission. That's the data flow, that's state management. And usually when we do things like input state management or simple app, we don't really need the whole complex system. We don't really need Vuex. We don't really need Linear for small application. We can easily build our own state management locally, or even a global state management for our app without complex solution. It's just small application. But once the application like evolve, and once we have bigger and bigger application projects on in our pocket, then more and more complex interactions, complex requirement, let's say complex user requirement and user expectation, and that make it into the fact that our system need to scale. And at some point, the management state manually, what we're doing right now, what we're building right now, is not enough. And that's make us come to the fact that if we're not careful enough, we can end up into a situation we don't know how to debug, or we do know how to debug, we don't know what caused this problem. How many times any of you sitting there looking at the screen and say, where am I? What caused the UI not responding to me? It's supposed to work. It's supposed to work, right? But yeah, so that's come to state management, how we are supposed to do it correctly. Okay, this is one of the things. Yep. And before we dive in that complexity of state management, let's do a bit of recap of how we manage state in Vue at the moment. thanks to the hard work of the Vue team and all the collaborators, we have a very good system for writing our state management efficiently, not just writing any state management, writing efficiently. So we have React, sorry, not React. Well, I got confused with that. I was supposed to react with a Vue here. So we have composition API with reactive, with rep, with computed, with watcher, and so on. And so let's say in this example, I just have a form multi-step wizard with two steps. I sign a form with name and email, and I keep track of the step. So every step I move, I will increase the step whenever I'm allowed to increase it. And what it does, it just move forward, get an email, submit it, and that's it. This is simple, right? You don't really need Pinia, you don't need Vue.js, you don't really need XState for this because it's just very simple. However, once you launch the product, then the product owner will come to you and say, "Hey, you know what? The user just come to me and say, I want to go back." And what happened if the user click next without filling any data? I'm supposed to be blocked from doing that. And then maybe when the user finish submission is submitted the form, he want to restart. How we going to restart the whole forms wizard without refreshing the whole page or the whole view? And what if the step is incremented outbound? Because like you say, we just increment by plus plus. What happened if we accidentally increment it by step 3 while we only have 2 steps? How are we going to display it? How are we going to plug it? And what happened after we click submit? Are we going to do something about management, the asynchronous submission status, like loading, error, and so on? Well, all of that have make into one thing, the state management problem for complexity. All of those kind of requirements add up into add up the complexity into your very minimal state management logic that you currently have. So let's look at our for multi view, like multi-step form for the sign up form we just saw previously. So in this example, together with all the requirements, I came up with this store, or we call it the form store, that were written by Pinia. Well, again, this is Pinia, but it's written completely with also composition API. So you don't really need Pinia for anything unless you really take advantage of it, like really complex. Otherwise, you can actually use composition API to write your own something similar to Pinia, depending on how much time you have in on hands. But anyway, so in this form store or data management state management for our form, I actually keep 3 state: the step, the submission status, and the arrow. And then every time when I move next, I click on like I advance a step forward, and then I advance step backward if I move previous. And then of course I add in some guardian, like only move like decrease or increase if it's still without the bound. And then for submission, I also set the submission to loading to true, and set the arrow whenever it's needed, and reset the is submitting status. And of course, need to advance the step to the last stage to indicate that this already finished to the last stage. And at this point, from all of this, you can see that I have a very, very complex, messy flow here. Look at this flow. The first thing you see, will you understand it? The second you will see, how I know where I am and where I'm supposed to go, or if I want to add something, how I'm supposed to know that I won't break anything. Because each of the step here, you check in, let's say step 4, if you add another step, you need to check here. You need to make sure that you advance the step, the number of steps, and you also make sure that you advance the last step instead of 4 to 5 and so on. And also on the data updating is scattered around. So the problem here is that it's not consistent anymore. It can be very inconsistent if it gets bigger and bigger and larger. And then all the asynchronous is much scattered. You kind of setting up the error everywhere. You don't have a way to do it. Like someone along the way will mess up. And even though the form, the handle, and asynchronous look similar to others process, you cannot reuse it, and it's very hard to debug. So now here comes the question: can we fix it? Yes, we can. Can we define some sort of predefined state and the connection between them, and then let the system handle the state update, like the step update, like the status of the asynchronous update, and you can just focus on more important things like update the data, keeping track the data, and so on. Well, for that, we have state machine. Okay, so what is state machines? I would say state machines or finite state machine is just a code logic, or you can call it the model, or you can call it machine. What it does is that it defines a bunch of behavior of a system into finite number of state, which means a behavior of a system will be matched to a state. And the transition between one behavior to another behavior is called event. And we only use event to map the different state to each other, which means as you can imagine it's like a graph. So the state is actually the node of the graph, and the edge, which is the connection between one node to another node, is the transition event. And because you do one-to-one like that, we only can be in one state at a time. And there's no way that we have in two states, and there's no way that we don't know any state that we're not expected, because it's finite number of state. We need to know what is the number of state we have. One very common example for this is the traffic light, would have only three states: red, yellow, and green. And when you move from red, you move to yellow, and then from yellow to green, and from green to red, or vice versa, and so on. So in this case, if you want to add another state or add in additional logic, you know exactly where to add. So if I add another color like blue, then I add it between red and yellow, and then I just adjust the edge, which is the event. Instead of going from red to yellow, I go from red to blue, and from blue to yellow. And then if something happened, I kind of pinpoint exactly where it will happen, that the potential bugs will happen. And for this, it's predictable, it's scalable, and it's debuggable. You know exactly where you are. You can narrow down where you can debug the problem that happened and find a fix for that. Okay, so that's about state machine. XState for Vue, based on that, is the declarative predictable state logic framework that written in TypeScript, fully supported by TypeScript. It offers you a lot of different ways to write this, to do state management with guards, like from one state to another, how you can control the conditional transition and add in effect like context, data, extra data, telemetry, and so on. And of course, everything based on event. And for Vue, we can use XState/Vue, which is the leverage the composition API. And when you plug in the machine with it, you already have it's fully plugged into the Vue reactivity system. And the last thing that is awesome, I hope I will have time to show you that you can actually visualize the state change using XState state machine with Stately team. They did a very good job in that. You can visualize the state and then get the generated code, and you don't have to write any code, very minimal. Anyway, so to install it, npm install XState/Vue. And that comes to the thing. We're going to do a live demo, and what we're going to do in this live demo is we're going to refactor what we have in Pinia store for the sign-up form, the code that you see previously, into using state machine, and make sure that the state machine will handle all the transition automatically, and we only need to update the state and see how it goes. So some of the features we're going to handle here: we save the data to the context. We manage the switching between the state with back and next. We can retry. If the failed submission, we can restart the submission to a new submission. We can close the submission without any data submitted, and we also handle error on submission. Okay, so let's see. So here is how it looks. You can see here if I do text next, I will put it here, and it still can submit because I don't have any blocker here. And how do it look in the code? So if you go to the code, I have a form, which is the Pinia store. The code is what we just showed before, nothing interesting here to see. The multiple form, I have the several input, and I have a lot of if, else, the step, submitted. So now let's build a state machine, okay? So in the multiple step state machine, I'm going to import from XState. Yep. I'm going to import a function called setup. This allow me to create a definition of multi-step machine config. Okay, the basic config for creating the setup. And then in this one, let's say I can do ID, and then I will set a multi-step. I can set up the initial step to be the first step is name. It's fine. But I also can set up it up once I create the state machine. Okay, so this config, the instance will have the function called create machine, and you can pass more customized state machine options into this to create your own instance of state machine. So in this one, I'm going to I'm not going to redefine the initial, so I'm going to define my state. Okay, so here I'm going to define my state, and I'm using ChatGPT, GitHub Copilot to help me with that. So to define the state, I define name, email, passports, and success. Okay, so here I don't want to set. I want to transmit it to submit, which will not do anything yet. And then I will also add an arrow. Okay, and what also don't do anything yet. Okay, and what it does here on the name, I will set an event called next, which target to email. Similarly, on email, I set the next to top password and the previous to name. And in password, I will not set this next. I will set the submit to submit. Okay, and the previous to email, and the submit, I'll leave it for now. Okay, so this is all I have for the state. I need to define a context to keep my own data for the form submission, which I will define the form data, and we'll have name, email, and password. Okay, great. Great. So now I have all of this already. I can go to the multiple form, and I will disable the store. I'm going to switch it to use the what called the multiple machine. Okay, and do multi-step machine. Okay, just close it. Great. And then in here, I'm going to get exported. Okay, so I'm going to export this machine, and we're going to import it here. And now I'm going to create the instance. We're going to plug this machine inside the reactivity system of Vue application, and you will use machine composable. And then I put this multi-step machine inside, and this one will return me an object that have several properties and methods. So one of them is the snapshot or the current state. So I can just map it to store to keep the convention, and I'll have some function for sending the event. Okay, so let's take a look. So here you can see the store type equal for 1. For this one, I will do the store, and I will do the matches, and it will be named. So you don't compare directly the store, the current state. You use the matches function, and then I also do the same thing with all the with all the steps. So here I will do it email, okay, and out here I'll do it password. Okay, cool. So this is password, and of course the store format is not. So the store is actually inside the context. So I also fix the context. Okay, Cool. And now I'm going to add one more thing. I need to update the data. So I'm going back to here and I'm going to have another event that could update. It doesn't move, it just update and I do actions and then I do assign, which will assign the form data with the new data from the context and the event. Okay, great. And I will do the same for all of them. So I will add another one like this, but instead of name, I will add this email. And a password will also have this. Instead of email, I do a password. Okay. And then I'm going back here and I will do an input. And then a send, state type, a update. Okay. And value. Okay. So I will just copy this and repeat it here. Let's just close this one so everyone can see my screen. Okay, great. So now I have already updated everything. Great. And now that's one thing. And now I need to handle the set previous and next. So here store previous or store next. So first of all, I need to handle the if here. So I wanted to make sure that I only display the back button if it's have previous, which I will do compute, and I'm not doing the store step here. I'm doing the store dot value, but matches. Okay, and I supposed to be have previous, and have previous doesn't have the name, so just make sure that it's the second stage or the third stage. And similarly, I have next. Okay, or yep, or email. And last, and that's pretty much it. And then I need to import this from Vue. Okay, great. And then here, I'm going back here. I'm going to the button. I'll just set here as previous, and also here as next. Next. Okay, great. And now I have the submit form. And this submit form, I will also do the store, not match it password, because that is the place where I can submit the form. Okay, so and then here I don't do that. I will do send, type, submit. Okay, and of course here also I will do send, and then type and previous, and this is also type equal next. Okay, let's try and hopefully it will work. Okay, so here is already here. I'll do next and I do next. Okay, so we can go back. Yeah. Let's see if I show in here initial state. So I do need to put initial state here instead of in the setup. So I put initial state here so it will not kill me. Great. Now here comes the next thing. We need to disable the store when submitting. So how we do that? So I would check if the store can submit or not. Okay. And now how I'm going, not can submit. And how I'm going to check if the store can submit or not, I'm going to put some guard, which is the number of guards to guard my event transition. So in here I do the is for valid, and I do the context. Okay. And I'm going to be here that I get the name, email, password, and make sure nothing is empty. Okay, so I take the from valid. I'm going to the submit, and I'm going to change it. Instead of putting the text, I will just put in the target, submit, and put here the guard. And this should work. Now let's check. Hopefully. Okay, so here I'm going to leave the email empty, and you can see the submit button is empty, and I'm going to back here. The submit button is on. Okay, now it works. And now we need to handle sending, trigger the submission. So let's go to here. We have the submit button here. In XState, there's a nice thing about it that you don't really need to define the state or the actions and event. You can also invoke some sort of like some sort of additional actions, asynchronous actions. Let's say here I would invoke something called a mission, and on done I would do target and success, and on arrow I will move it to the different state called arrow. Okay, and the submit form I will define it as one of the actor here. Okay, and the submit form will be it actually you need to get it promise from using from promise from XState to create a function to wrap around function, so it will map everything to it will map the asynchronous data handling like error, success state, result, recheck automatically into the state, into the event of your machine, so you don't have to manually update in it. So in here, I will put let's say in information something, and then I will just return fake API code. Okay, so fake API code is a function that's sending message to the server. Okay, so now I need to get some to pass some data here to be able to send to fake API code, right? So for that, I need to go back here and to the invoke, and here I can pass the input to the invoke function by put in the form data, or I can just spread it. Okay, and then in the submit form action here, I receive it as an input, and then I can just spread the input. And if you want to check, you can see if the form is submitting and get the input correctly. So let's try. So I say me, and then I'm going to email, and I'm going to do submit, and that you can see that I get the submit form, and also the form submitted successfully. And then I got the submit form data here. So let's take a look in the multiple form. If we go back here, and we can see that the else. This happened because there's a bug here that it just couldn't find the error, so it's formed successfully. But that's a bug. So for VLs, we would do the same thing. We will also do store, okay, match arrow, okay, and then instead of arrow, we can do like arrow submission, okay, and then we will do VL if. Also can do that, or maybe it's not needed because it automatically anyway. Great. And now if we finish with that. So now if we want to arrow, let's go to the fake API. And instead of doing that, we can do throw new arrow, not implemented. Okay. Yeah, and then let's try. Next, and submit. And you can see it's an error submission. And we don't need to do anything. We don't need to set arrow equal something. We don't need to keep track anything. We have the submission already. So let's just get it back. Okay. Okay, cool. And now I want to do one thing. If I submit successfully, it go to the successfully state, and I want to be able to reset and start a new section. So I do another one called reset. Okay, and then I don't disable anything, and that's one I'm going to be success and going to do start a new section. Okay, and that's mean in here I'm going to the success. Okay, I'm going to define an event called reset, of course, and I'm going to target name, and of course I'm going to clear up the form. Let's see if it's work. So here I'm going to do Maya, and going to do add something. I don't really care. And I submit. Oh, wait. Submitting form, submission, did I save? Yep. So I probably do something wrong. Submission form, and okay, let's just try it again. And okay, so I probably doing something wrong. Let me see on arrow on target sets, and go back here. Matches arrow and matches set. Anyway, you got my idea, and it should work. I probably did something, some small mistake right here, but I promise you, it works before. Anyway, so that's it for our for the state machine. If you take a look at the form before and take a look on the multi-step, so each of the state is actually on the data is very common in here, very concise, and we don't have to keep all of this. We only need to keep the context, which is a form. That's it. And we can add in another step and so on and so forth. So what about the visualizer? The visualizer, let's say I'm going to Stately editor. That's a nice thing. If you go to the Stately file, and I'm going to go to blank canvas, here is the editor where you can actually create a new state. You can create by writing it, and then it will update the code here for you. Here. Or you can import it. So let me go here. I'm going to copy all of this, and I put it in here. And then I import this one. And then you can see, if you look inside here, you can see it gives you a visualization diagram of how your state flow look like. So from here, you can see that it's going to email on the next, and also it can go from the set, it go back to the name on reset. So when I do the simulate, I can do the simulate, I can do next button, it will move to email, and then we have 3 events to do, and then I can do next, and so on and so forth. You can also write here, or you can copy the code and paste back to your application. It's already good for ready to use. And that's pretty much it for our let's go back to our thing here. And that's mean from this state where we have no idea what we're doing, and actually it's very complex and very messy, we wait, sorry. We come to a very nice written down, very organized, where you can see which day, which kind of event tied to the state, and what will be updated, and what we're supposed to understand, what we're supposed to expect from those state and actions. And of course, you can always debug, can always try to write here and show this to the product owner or to the designer to understand, the whole team to understand that this is your plan. It's very good in the design preview or design technical review meeting, where everyone will ask a lot of questions about how you design like this. And that's it. Before we finish, some key takeaway. So state machine make it very predictable, deterministic, because we know what it is, we can trace it, we can add additional telemetry, we know exactly how what we expected from one state to another. But that means we really need to predict it. We need to plan ahead how it looks. So it helps us to keep the state isolated. Like you saw, I have the machine. I can use the same machine in React code and in Vue code in a different projects. And I just need to make a very minor change to match the UI, but overall, I can reuse it as much as I want. And it's really easy to perform the real-time debugging and testing. They have some inspector, and I haven't tried yet. Somehow it doesn't pop up anything. So you're supposed to have the inspector, like the Vue inspector and Nux inspector, that will show you how the state look like every time when you do the state change. And it's not for everything. The learning curve for XState is stiff. It's really not easy to grab from the first time. It's not straightforward, and you really need to wrap your head around the concept of plan your code, know what state you have, over than jump in the code and write whatever and make it work. So this is not for everything. Don't use it for something like toggle. Don't use it for something like like traffic lights, because it's not meant for that. It's too simple for it. But for things like step wizard, checkout card, authentication, complex step that handle and combine between asynchronous data control and um, asynchronous data control and step, let's say, and local state handling, then XState is definitely the case. I've been using XState to create some sort of scheduler for my blog post, for my whole blog post workflow. So I can write a blog post, I can schedule it, and then I can schedule the content, generate the content for social media, and post it on social media to promote my post. This is the case for that. Other than that, you don't really need it. So evaluate, and of course, you should check out the resources for XState, like the visualizer that we tried. It's really cool. Just to build some draft and to get people know how to use the how to see how you talk, or to just lay out your thought about how to design a system. And follow David K. Piano. He's the creator of XState, and he's really cool, and he make a lot of nice stuff. So yep. And lastly, like I said, XState is not for everyone, and also it's not for let's say make it work in the first time. Try to plan ahead your code and code later. Whenever you receive a feature, if it's big, try to plan ahead. If it's small, okay, don't mind me. And that's it. Thank you for joining my talk. I hope you enjoy my talk, and feel free to connect me on social media. Thank you.
Thank you, Maya. We do have some questions. All right. How do you handle async operations in XState?
Well, you know what? In XState, async operation, you can handle it using the invoke, like the one I should show you in my demo. There's several ways to do it. Invoke is one of the things, and another thing, you can create some sort of transition state. So let's say the first state when you, for example, I have a state called fetch. And then I will do another state called loading. So in fetch, I can send an event that go to loading, trigger something in advance, and then go to loading, which is the transition state. And the asynchronous actions finish, it will send another event to move from the transition state to another state. But that is pretty complex. So I like the invoke, where I like invoke better when I can handle it. But again, if you only handle asynchronous operation, I would suggest you to use stack query instead, because it's built for that.
Thank you. All right. Can XState be used in TypeScript independent from Vue 2?
Yes, absolutely yes.
Sweet. Do you have any concrete use cases other than registration?
Well, I have a lot. Okay, if you want, I can show you. I mean, in my repository, we have I did a lot of I did a few example. The first talk about XState I did for Vue Nation is also on how I build some sort of checkout machine. Like I built something like a corner wizard that you can actually reuse it in your code. So basically you can just define the step yourself, like define the view for each of the step, and then you plug into my component, and it will automatically render into the step and map it into different state, like a machine for the wizard, and it know how to it know how to move it within the step. And yeah, I call it Vurian Wizard, so you can find it in my repo. And other a lot of other things like authentication is also a good example. Yeah.
Thank you. Two more. Could you explain how XState helps ensure validation and smooth transitions between different states of the form?
This one I need to get a more elaboration because I'm not sure I understand the questions. So let's say you say validation is smooth transition. What do you mean exactly? For example, validation like input validations or just the whole form validation? Uh, so for example, let's say I have a name. So I update the name. I want to have some gore or some arrow on the name. That's probably, if that's what you meant, you can add another, you can add the nested state for validation, but you don't really need that. So talk to me. I really need to understand more about this question.
The next one starts with additionally. I don't know if they're linked. I don't think so. But yeah, it could be the follow-up. Additionally, what are the main benefits you've observed when using X state compared to other state management approaches for forms?
Oh, let's say XState is the very isolated and very well organized approach. So I personally like it because I can actually visualize and I can think, like I can really think ahead how many state I need for my for like it's really focused on data, the flow, like the state flow of interactions, not the data management like Pinia for like form, not like Vue validate for form specifically to validate a certain input field. It's more like use it at the whole, to like use it at the high level to validate that you to keep you to keep your state in one place and keep let's say more for more complex form. For example, if you want to have the form that you do handles asynchronous together with the local state, and you want to save the data, but you don't want to be like the one that multiple step form that I just show you. So you want to save the data, but you don't want to keep track yourself of the status of the form, like which step we finish, which field you already complete, or something like that. So XState is great. And like you say, you can also take XState and put it in other code base. So you can create a whole design system like reusable machines for different projects if you find it in common. Other state approach, let's say, for example, Vuex or Pinia are very Vue dedicated, and it can be that when you switch to different things, you need to you need to rewrite it. And other things like it's complex, like you cannot really add trace where you are. Like trace, it's very hard for you to trace back if something happened, and because it's like a blind box over there. So
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Maya. That was our last question. Thank you again for joining us today.